The last thing I remembered before the world became a symphony of screeching tires and shattering glass was my husband's voice, dripping with the cold contempt I had grown so used to. "You're nothing but a cripple, Clara. Did you honestly believe you could ever compete with Sophia?" Those words were still echoing in my mind when I managed to pry my eyes open again. I wasn't in the mangled wreckage of a car. I was reborn, sitting at my old desk in my senior year high school classroom. The steady drumming of rain against the window pane, a familiar rhythm from a lifetime ago. It was the very day I had agreed to deliver a love letter for him. A simple favor that set in motion the destruction of my entire life. This time, as he slid the letter across the desk toward me, I picked it up, and in front of the entire class, I tore his heartfelt words for the school's most popular girl into tiny, insignificant pieces. "Ethan," I said, my voice steady, "we're finished." I was certain I was dead. That was the first coherent thought that managed to surface through the fog. The shrill, piercing wail of an ambulance siren seemed to be coming from inside my own head. Through a haze, my vision was filled with the contorted, twisted metal of the car's roof. A warm, sticky liquid was trickling down from my forehead, blurring everything into a red-tinged chaos. Ethan's voice cut through the noise from that driver's seat, laced with that familiar, bone-deep disgust he reserved for me. "You're like a persistent ghost, Clara, one I can't seem to shake, causing problems for me even on the day we were supposed to get divorced." I tried to form a reply, to spit back some venom of my own, but no sound would come out. My body felt as if it were pinned beneath an immense weight, crushing the air from my lungs. The cacophony of the rain, the insistent siren, and the shocked cries of people nearby all began to blend together, fading into a dull roar. "If you hadn't gotten yourself involved all those years ago," he continued, his voice sounding more distant now, "getting into that stupid car wreck, delivering some ridiculous love letter, why would I have ever been forced to marry a cripple like you? Do you have any idea how much my friends have mocked me for all these years?" His words grew fainter, a cruel whisper on the edge of my fading consciousness. "But it's all over now. Once you're dead, I can finally be with Sophia openly. To be honest, Sophia and I are already married. We got our license when we were overseas. Darkness finally consumed everything, and I was sure that was the end. But when my eyes opened again, it wasn't to the sterile white of a hospital or the darkness of an afterlife. It was to the soft, gentle sunlight streaming through a classroom window, casting dappled shadows across the wooden surface of my desk. I blinked, my eyes struggling to focus on the open math test in front of me, a practice exam from my senior year. "Clara, could you do something for me?" A pink, heart-shaped envelope was pushed in front of me, and the voice that accompanied it was one I never, ever wanted to hear again. "I need you to give this to Sophia for me today." My head snapped up, and I was staring into the face of an 18-year-old Ethan, my childhood friend and the man who had systematically ruined my life. He was looking at me with that charming, easy smile I had once found impossible to refuse, the same smile he used every time he needed a favor, which had been a constant for the past decade. "You?" The word caught in my throat, a strangled sound, and my fingers began to tremble uncontrollably. "What's wrong?" he asked, tilting his head, his face boyish and bright in the sunlight. "It's just a love letter. It's not the first time. I'll buy you a soda tomorrow to say thanks." A tidal wave of memories crashed over me. It was this exact letter on this exact day. In my previous life, I had delivered this letter for him. On my way back, a car had run a red light. The accident resulted in the amputation of my right leg, which meant I missed the SATs and lost my only chance to pursue my dream of becoming a doctor. The Liu family, Ethan's family, crippled by guilt, forced him to marry me, a decision that ended up destroying both of our lives in the long run. "Clara, what are you staring at?" Ethan waved a hand in front of my face, pulling me from my reverie. "School's almost over. You can head over to her classroom in a little bit." At the front of the room, our math teacher was methodically explaining the final problem on the chalkboard. The air in the classroom was thick with the humid heat of early summer and the palpable tension of the upcoming college entrance exams. I looked around at the faces, so familiar yet so strange after all this time. This was my senior year classroom. I had actually traveled 10 years into the past. "No," I heard myself say, my own voice sounding unnervingly calm. You can give it to her yourself. Ethan froze, his smile faltering. He clearly hadn't expected me to refuse. Come on, don't be like that. You know how strict our homeroom teacher is. I'll be in huge trouble if I get caught. You're a good student, all the teachers like you. You won't get into any trouble even if they see you. I picked up the pink love letter from my desk and, under his expectant and then disbelieving gaze, tore it neatly in half. Then I tore it into quarters, and finally, I crumpled the pieces into a tight ball and tossed it into the large trash can at the back of the classroom. Clara! Are you out of your mind? Ethan's face contorted with anger, his loud voice causing several of our classmates to turn and stare. I'm perfectly sane, I said, looking him directly in the eye, all the accumulated anger and grief from my past life churning inside me like a storm. I remembered every single time he had mocked me for being a cripple in front of his friends, how he had left me alone time and time again to fly abroad to see his first love, even getting married overseas behind my back, and how he had insulted my parents and my family. Ethan, from this moment on, we're done. Your problems are your own to solve. The school bell rang at that exact moment, a perfect punctuation mark. I quickly packed my school bag, ignored his stunned, speechless expression, and hurried out of the classroom without a single backward glance. The afternoon sun felt warm and real on my skin. I took a deep, shuddering breath, feeling the healthy, powerful stride of my two legs. This wasn't a dream. I was truly reborn, back on the very day that had altered my destiny forever. This time, I would not make the same catastrophic mistake. The instant I pushed open the front door to my house, my eyes filled with tears. Clara, you're home, my mom called, poking her head out from the kitchen. Her face was still smooth, free of the deep wrinkles that years of worrying about me would later carve into her skin. Dinner will be ready soon. Go wash your hands. I just stood in the entryway, greedily soaking in the sight of my home, a place both familiar and strangely new. The calendar hanging on the living room wall clearly read March 12th, 2015. My mom's favorite light blue curtains swayed in the gentle breeze from the open window, and a plate of freshly washed fruit sat on the dining table. Every small detail was so incredibly vivid. In my past life, after my leg was amputated, my parents had nearly bankrupted our family to cover my extensive medical treatments. My mother's hair had turned white almost overnight, and my father's back seemed to become permanently stooped with the weight of it all. And now, here they were, healthy and whole, standing right in front of me, as if heaven itself had granted me a second chance to get things right. What's the matter? Just standing there in a daze, my mom said, walking over and wiping her hands on her apron before gently touching my forehead. Are you feeling sick? I threw my arms around her waist, burying my face in her shoulder and breathing in the familiar, comforting scent of cooking oil and laundry detergent. It's nothing, I mumbled into her shirt. I just missed you. She laughed, a warm and easy sound. Silly girl, you just left for school this morning and you already miss me? She patted my back gently. Go on, wash up. I made your favorite sweet and sour ribs tonight. At dinner, I ate with an appetite that surprised even my dad, devouring every dish my mom had prepared. After the meal, I insisted on clearing the table myself, and then, to my parents' astonishment, I made an announcement. From now on, I'm going to focus completely on studying for the SATs. I might not have as much time to help with chores. My dad smiled, pushing his glasses up his nose. Look at you, finally getting serious about your future. It's about time. He nodded approvingly. All right, your mom and I will take care of the housework. You just concentrate on your studies. Back in the privacy of my room, I locked the door, dove onto my bed, and buried my face in my pillow, letting out a few muffled, silent screams before I finally felt a sense of calm settle over me. I was really back. Back in the most critical month before the final exams. I sat up and pulled all of my textbooks and notebooks from my backpack, spreading them across the wide surface of my desk. Since fate had seen fit to give me another opportunity, I was determined to seize it with both hands. I would get into the Capital University medical school program I had always dreamed of and become a doctor. I opened my math notebook and my heart sank. The formulas and problem-solving methods that had once been second nature to me now seemed vaguely unfamiliar, like a language I had forgotten how to speak. I then opened my physics and chemistry textbooks, and the situation was even worse. Years spent in a miserable marriage, coupled with the crushing low self-esteem that came with my disability, had caused me to forget most of the knowledge I had worked so hard to acquire in high school. You have to be kidding me, I muttered to myself, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead as my fingers trembled slightly. Rebirth had given me a healthy body and a second chance at life, but it hadn't magically restored the knowledge I had once possessed, and the SATs were less than 3 months away. I took a deep breath, grabbed a new, empty notebook, and began to formulate a study plan. In my previous life, the car accident had caused me to miss the exams entirely. I ended up getting a degree in a subject I had no passion for from an ordinary university through online courses. This time, I was determined to get into the best medical school in the country with the highest possible scores. It was 2 in the morning by the time I finished creating a detailed study schedule, planned down to the hour for each and every day. My eyelids felt as heavy as lead, but I forced myself to open my math textbook and start reviewing from the most basic concepts, like trigonometric functions. "Clara, why are you still awake?" my mom asked, knocking softly on my door. "I'm going to bed soon," I called back, but I insisted on finishing the problem I was working on before finally turning off my desk lamp. Lying in the dark, I thought about what had happened at school that afternoon. The shocked and angry look on Ethan's face came to mind, and a small, satisfying thrill of revenge washed over me. In my past life, I would have done anything he asked of me. I had even ruined my own life just to deliver a love letter for him. And after we were married, he had taken out all of his resentment and frustration on me. This time, I whispered into the darkness before drifting into a deep, exhausted sleep. "I'm not having anything to do with you." The next morning, I arrived at school a full half-hour earlier than usual. The early morning sun slanted through the classroom windows, casting long shadows over the empty desks. I took out my English vocabulary book and began to memorize words. As my classmates started to trickle in, they all looked at me with surprised expressions, not used to seeing me there so early. When Ethan walked in, I didn't even bother to look up from my book, my entire focus on a particularly difficult physics problem. "Clara?" He stopped in front of my desk, his voice sharp with annoyance. "Aren't you going to explain what happened yesterday?" I kept writing down formulas in my notebook, not giving him so much as a glance. "There's nothing to explain." "What is wrong with you?" He slammed his hand down hard on my notebook, making me jump. "This is how it's always been. You help me with things, and I buy you an ice cream." "What's the problem?" I finally looked up at him. The face that had once made my heart race with affection now only filled me with a deep sense of disgust. That was before. Now, I have to study for my exams. I don't have time to play your stupid games. "The exams?" he scoffed. "With your grades, you could get into a good college without even trying. What are you so worked up about?" I yanked my notebook back from under his hand. "What I do is none of your business." Ethan's face turned an ugly shade of red. Just as he was about to say something else, our homeroom teacher, Miss Davis, walked into the classroom. He had no choice but to retreat to his seat, fuming silently. Throughout the morning classes, I could feel Ethan's gaze on me, but I never once turned to meet it. During the short breaks between periods, I crammed in as much review as I could, even holding off on going to the bathroom, afraid to waste a single precious second. When the final bell rang at the end of the day, I quickly packed my bag to leave. Ethan rushed over to block my path. "Let's walk home together." "No thanks, I'm going to the library," I said, trying to step around him. He grabbed my wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. "What is wrong with you? Why are you suddenly being so cold to me? Aren't we supposed to be best friends?" I shook his hand off, my voice rising slightly. "I told you I need to study. Please stop bothering me." The few other students still left in the classroom turned to look at us, their whispers filling the air. Ethan's face turned beet red, a flash of pure anger in his eyes. "Clara, have you lost your mind?" "Think whatever you want," I said, slinging my backpack over my shoulder and striding out of the classroom, my heart pounding in my chest. In my past life, I was always so careful around him, terrified of doing anything that might upset him. Now I could finally, justifiably, say no. The library was so quiet you could hear the soft turning of pages. I found an empty spot in a secluded corner, spread out my books, and began to study. It wasn't long before I felt someone sit down in the chair directly across from me. I assumed it was Ethan, back to pester me again, and I looked up impatiently. "Alex," I said, surprised to see the boy sitting in front of me. He was the academic monitor of our class, a top student who had never ranked outside the top 3 in our entire grade. He was usually quiet and tended to keep to himself. He pushed up his black-framed glasses and handed me a notebook, his expression completely blank. "Miss Davis asked me to give this to you." Confused, I took the notebook and opened it. Inside were neat, incredibly detailed biology notes, covering all of the major topics for the upcoming exams, and even some extra material that went beyond the textbook. "This is my notes," Alex said curtly. "Miss Davis said you want to go to med school." I looked at him stunned. How did Miss Davis know that? I had just written it down on my career planning form that morning. Alex just shrugged and was already looking down at his own work, clearly having no intention of continuing the conversation. I carefully flipped through the notes he had given me. The content was more systematic and easier to understand than our dense textbook, with key points and difficult concepts highlighted in different colors for clarity. Thank you," I said. "And please thank Miss Davis for me." Alex just nodded without saying another word. We studied in that comfortable silence until the library's closing bell rang. Over the next few days, Ethan tried all sorts of things to get my attention. He left my favorite boba tea on my desk, though I didn't even like that flavor anymore. He deliberately laughed and joked loudly with his friends whenever I was walking home from school, and he even had some of our mutual friends ask me why I'd had such a sudden change of heart. I ignored it all, completely immersed in my own world of studies. During the day, I paid close attention in every class, chasing down teachers with questions during the breaks. After school, I went straight to the library. At home, I would study until the early hours of the morning, pinching my thigh to stay awake whenever I felt myself drifting off. During our biology class on Friday, the teacher announced there would be a short quiz the following week. After class, I saw Alex organizing his notes and worked up the courage to approach him. "Alex, could I possibly borrow your biology notes?" I asked, my voice getting quieter as I spoke. "Just for the section on next week's quiz." In my past life, I had never asked anyone for help with schoolwork, but this was a special situation. He looked up at me, then pulled a folder from his bag and handed it to me. "The latest version is in here." "Thank you. I'll definitely give it back to you on Monday," I said, taking the folder like it was a priceless treasure. "No rush," he said, then paused for a moment. "Your study method has a problem." I froze. "What problem?" "You're rushing too much," Alex said calmly. "The SATs aren't something you can just cram for overnight. Staying up late like this is just making you less efficient in the long run." My face flushed. How did he know I was staying up late? Were my dark circles that obvious? I just have a lot of material to catch up on," I said quietly. Alex looked at me for a moment, then suddenly said, "Saturday, 8 a.m., 3rd floor of the city library. I have compiled notes on the key topics for all subjects." I looked up in surprise, unable to believe my ears. Was Alex asking me to study with him? "Come or not, it's up to you," he said, already turning to leave, leaving me standing there clutching the biology notes, my heart beating in a strangely fast rhythm. This was a godsend. As I expected, Ethan was waiting for me at the school gate after class. This time, I pretended not to see him and walked straight toward the bus stop. "Clara!" he yelled, chasing after me. "What is wrong with you? You've been like a completely different person this whole week." "I've told you a dozen times I need to study," I said, trying to walk past him. "Cut the act," he said, raising his voice. "Are you into someone else? It's Alex, isn't it? You've been hanging around him all week." I stopped and turned to face him directly. "Ethan, we are not dating, and I have no obligation to explain myself to you. Who I hang out with is my own business." His expression looked like he'd been slapped across the face. "We grew up together. How can you treat me like this?" It's because I've known you for so long that I know exactly what kind of person you are, I said calmly. Please stop bothering me. I need to study. With that, I got on the bus that had just pulled up, leaving Ethan standing on the sidewalk looking utterly bewildered. Through the bus window, I saw his expression shift from shock to anger, and finally to a kind of confusion I'd never seen on his face before. In my past life, his every mood swing would have sent me into a panic. Now I just felt a profound sense of relief. As the bus pulled away from the curb, I took a deep breath, opened Alex's notes, and quickly lost myself in a sea of knowledge. This time, I wouldn't give up my future for anyone. On Saturday morning at 7:40, I found myself standing in front of the city library, nervously twisting the strap of my backpack. I was 20 minutes early, but I had barely slept the night before, my mind buzzing with an endless stream of formulas and historical theorems. When the large clock in front of the library finally pointed to 7:50, I saw a familiar figure getting off the bus. Alex was wearing a simple white t-shirt and jeans. In the bright morning sunlight, his skin looked exceptionally fair, and his eyes behind the black-framed glasses seemed to widen slightly when he saw me waiting. "Morning," he said, walking up to me with a brief greeting. Good morning," I stammered, feeling flustered. "I was just in the neighborhood, so I got here a little early." Alex just nodded, not calling out my obvious lie. His house was in the complete opposite direction from mine. The library's air conditioning was blasting, a welcome relief from the morning heat. I followed Alex up to the third floor, and we sat down at a quiet table by a large window. He pulled a thick, neatly bound stack of papers from his backpack and pushed it across the table toward me. "These are the key concepts and common question types for all the exam subjects that I've compiled," he said in a low voice, as if afraid to disturb the other readers. "You can look through them first. If you have any questions, just ask." I opened the first page. It was filled with dense yet perfectly orderly summaries of all the key points in math. Important formulas were marked in red, common mistakes were highlighted in yellow, and there were small, insightful pencil annotations in the margins. This was better than any review book you could buy in a store. This is so detailed," I said, looking up at him in genuine awe. "How long did it take you to put all of this together?" Alex looked down at his own book, but the tips of his ears turned a slight shade of red. "Not long. For the next 3 hours, we were lost in our own studies. Whenever I came across a concept I didn't understand, I would gently tap the page, and Alex would pause his own work, explaining it to me in a voice only we could hear until I fully understood. Around noon, my stomach rumbled loud enough to be embarrassing. Alex looked up at me, then pulled 2 rice balls and a bottle of water from his bag. "Here," he said, pushing one of them toward me. "It's from the cafeteria. The taste is so-so, but it'll fill you up." I was stunned. You prepared this beforehand?" "Yeah," Alex said, already unwrapping his and taking a bite. "Figured you'd get hungry." I held the warm rice ball in my hands, a wave of warmth spreading through my chest. In my past life, I barely remembered Alex, other than the fact that he was a lone wolf who always got good grades. It seemed that beneath that cool, reserved exterior was an unexpected thoughtfulness. "Thanks," I said softly, taking a bite. The aroma of seaweed filled my mouth. "It's actually really good." The corners of Alex's mouth lifted slightly. It might not have been a full smile, but it was enough to brighten his entire face. We continued studying through the afternoon, and when the library's closing music began to play, I was shocked to realize an entire day had passed. My notebook was filled with new problem-solving techniques and key concepts I had finally grasped. My head was a little fuzzy from absorbing so much new information, but I felt incredibly fulfilled. "Next Saturday, are you coming?" Alex asked suddenly as we were packing our bags. I looked up and met his eyes. The eyes behind his glasses were clear and calm, without a hint of joking. "Yes," I answered without a moment's hesitation. 8 o'clock, same spot," he said, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. "Remember to bring a water bottle. They have hot water here." I nodded, watching him walk away, a smile unconsciously forming on my lips. On my first weekend after being reborn, I had somehow become study partners with Alex. When I got to school on Monday, I was more focused than I had ever been. With Alex's notes and his clear explanations, the concepts that were once a confusing blur became crystal clear. I no longer chatted with classmates during breaks, instead using every spare moment to review the last lesson or prepare for the next. On Wednesday afternoon, during our free activity gym class, most of the other students were playing basketball or chatting in groups under the trees. I, however, snuck back to the empty classroom, pulled out my physics workbook, and started grinding through problems. "Knew I'd find you here," a voice said from the doorway. I looked up to see the class president, Chloe, leaning against the doorframe and twirling a set of keys on her finger. "The gym rep sent me to get a spare whistle," she said, walking in and glancing curiously at my workbook. "Working this hard? That's not like you." I smiled but didn't offer an explanation. In my past life, Chloe and I weren't close. She was the cheerful, popular type with a wide circle of friends, while I only ever orbited around Ethan. "You know, Ethan's been asking about you these past few days," Chloe said casually, pulling a whistle from the teacher's desk drawer. "He really doesn't seem to get why you're suddenly ignoring him." I put down my pen and sighed. "I just want to focus on my studies, that's all." "Oh, please," Chloe said, suddenly leaning in close and lowering her voice conspiratorially. "The whole class can see there's something going on between you and Alex. Someone saw you two studying together at the library last Saturday. That's basically headline news in our class." My face instantly grew hot. "We were just reviewing together." "Alex never studies with anyone," Chloe said meaningfully. "Last year, Tina Lou, who was second in our grade, tried to ask him for help, and he just handed her a reference book and sent her on her way." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just looked down and continued with my problems. Chloe didn't press the issue, blew her whistle softly, and left the classroom. After school, just as I was leaving through the main gate, I heard someone call my name from behind. I turned to see Ethan running toward me, his basketball uniform soaked with sweat, clearly having just finished a game. "Clara, wait up," he said, panting as he blocked my way. "Our class has a basketball game against Class 7 this Saturday. You're coming to watch, right?" I frowned. "I told you I have to study." "Just for an hour," Ethan pleaded, putting his hands together as if in prayer. "You know how important this game is? Those guys from Class 7 have always looked down on us." "This time, Ethan," I interrupted him. "I really don't have time." His expression fell. "Ever since Alex showed up, you've completely changed. What's so great about him anyway? He just walks around with a sour face all day and doesn't talk to anyone. He's just a bookworm." "Don't you talk about him like that." My voice suddenly rose, attracting glances from passing students. "Alex is 100 times better than you. At least he knows how to work for his own future instead of spending all day trying to impress Sophia." Ethan's face went white. How do you know about Sophia?" I realized I'd slipped up. In my past life, the only reason I knew about Sophia was because I was delivering that love letter for him. In this life, I shouldn't have known who she was. "I heard some classmates talking about it," I said quickly, trying to cover my tracks. "Anyway, I'm not going on Saturday. Find someone else to cheer for you." I turned and walked away, my heart pounding in my chest. Behind me, Ethan called my name a few more times, but I didn't look back. On Saturday morning, Alex and I were studying at the library as planned. During our lunch break, I couldn't help but check my phone and saw that our class group chat was flooded with pictures from the basketball game. There were several striking photos of Ethan looking impressive on the court, with Sophia and a few other girls cheering enthusiastically on the sidelines. "Distracted?" Alex said suddenly. I quickly locked my phone screen. "Sorry." He pushed a piece of scratch paper toward me. On it was a complex physics problem. "Try this." I recognized it as the final, most difficult question from last year's national exams. Taking a deep breath, I focused my mind and started solving it. When I finally found the breakthrough, I let out a small, excited cheer and looked up to meet Alex's approving gaze. That sense of accomplishment was more wonderful than any cheer at a basketball game. Around 4 in the afternoon, my phone suddenly buzzed. It was a text from Chloe. "Ethan got injured during the game. He's in the school nurse's office and keeps asking to see you." I stared at the message for a long time, memories of my past life flooding back. Whenever Ethan was sick or hurt, I was always the first one by his side. I remembered in our sophomore year when he had a high fever, I skipped class to take care of him at his house all day, even helping him copy all his missed homework. But after we were married, when my amputated leg was in excruciating pain, he had hung up on me because he was busy shopping with Sophia. Something wrong? Alex noticed my strange expression. I showed him the text and gave a bitter smile. The old me would have rushed over there immediately. He thought for a moment, then suddenly asked, "And the current you? Do you want to go?" "No," I answered decisively. "He has plenty of friends. He doesn't need me. Besides," I pointed to the thick stack of review materials in front of me, "we have more important things to do." The corners of Alex's mouth lifted slightly. He handed me a biology notebook. "Let's continue." When I got home that evening, the class group chat was still buzzing about the game. From my classmates' conversations, I managed to piece together what had happened. Ethan had twisted his ankle during the game. Sophia had reluctantly helped him to the nurse's office, but she quickly made an excuse and left, leaving him there all alone. I heard he was in low spirits, constantly asking why no one was with him. I closed the group chat without making any comment. The old me would have been heartbroken and would have immediately called to comfort him. Now I just felt it was a kind of karma. Let him have a taste of what it feels like to have no one care. On Monday at school, Ethan's ankle was still wrapped in a thick bandage. I deliberately avoided his gaze and walked straight to my seat. During breaks, I noticed him trying to talk to me several times, but I managed to avoid him by pretending not to see him. At lunch in the cafeteria, I was busy eating when a tray was suddenly placed on the table across from me. I looked up to see Alex sitting there with a deadpan expression. I was so surprised I almost choked on my food. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, even though there were plenty of empty tables all around us. "No, no one's here." I quickly shook my head. We ate our meals in silence, but it wasn't awkward. Occasionally our eyes would meet and he would give a slight nod before continuing to eat. This simple, natural way of being together felt strangely comforting. "Well, well, since when does our ice prince genius eat with other people?" A teasing voice came from behind us. I turned to see Sophia and her two best friends standing there, a smirk on their faces that I couldn't quite decipher. Sophia was undeniably beautiful with big eyes, a small face, and long, smooth black hair. She was the dream girl for many of the boys at our school. "What's it to you?" I said coldly, surprised by my own directness. In my past life, I always felt inferior around Sophia and wouldn't have even dared to speak to her. Sophia was clearly taken aback by my response. After a moment, she forced a smile. "Clara, I hear you've been studying really hard lately. Trying to beat our Alex?" "Your Alex?" I raised an eyebrow, noticing that Alex's brow had also furrowed slightly. "Oh, just a slip of the tongue," Sophia said, flipping her hair. "By the way, Ethan asked me to tell you he wants to talk. He'll be waiting for you behind the gym after school." "I'm busy," I refused flatly. Sophia pouted. "Suit yourself. But he's in a pretty pathetic state right now. His foot's injured, no one's taking care of him, and he doesn't even have anyone to copy homework from." "Then you go take care of him," I said, putting down my chopsticks. Jessica snorted contemptuously. "I don't have time for him. If I didn't feel sorry for him, I wouldn't have even bothered to pass on the message." With that, she and her friends sauntered away. I turned to look at Alex and found him staring at me with a complex expression. "What is it?" I asked, feeling a bit uneasy. "Nothing," he said, pushing up his glasses. "I just realized you're not like the rumors say you are." "What do the rumors say I'm like?" I asked curiously. Alex thought for a moment. "Quiet, introverted, always following Ethan around like his little shadow." The description stung because it was true of my past life. I had made Ethan the center of my entire universe and had completely lost myself in the process. "People change," I said softly. Alex nodded, then suddenly pulled a piece of paper from his bag and handed it to me. "The topics for next week's mock exam. I've highlighted the key points." I took the paper, a wave of warmth washing over me. After my rebirth, it seemed I had finally found someone who truly respected me. Not someone who treated me like a convenient tool, but someone who was willing to walk alongside me. After school, I deliberately took the long way around the school grounds to avoid the gym, but a limping Ethan still managed to block my path at the school gate. "Why didn't you come?" he demanded, his eyes bloodshot. "I waited for you for an hour." "I told you I was busy," I said, trying to get past him. He grabbed my wrist. "Is it because of Alex? You like him, don't you?" "Let go," I said, struggling to break free. "Who I like is none of your business." "How is it none of my business?" Ethan's voice held a tremor I had never heard before. "We grew up together. I thought we—" "You thought what?" I laughed coldly. "That I'd follow you around forever at your beck and call? Help you with your homework, deliver your love letters, and do anything you wanted?" He froze, his hand instinctively loosening its grip. I didn't mean it like that." "Ethan," I said, taking a deep breath, "from now on, please take responsibility for your own life. I'm not wasting another minute of mine on you." With that, I turned and left, leaving him standing alone at the school gate. The setting sun stretched his shadow long and lonely behind him, but I didn't look back. The week before the third round of mock exams, my nerves were stretched as taut as a bowstring. I was sleeping only 4 hours a night. The rest of my time, aside from eating and commuting, was spent completely immersed in studying. I could finish half a set of multiple-choice questions in a 10-minute break, spent my lunch hours hiding in a corner of the library memorizing English essays, and even listened to recordings of key concepts I'd made while walking to and from school. On Wednesday night, as I was wrestling with a particularly difficult physics problem at my desk, the letters and numbers in front of me suddenly began to twist and blur. I blinked hard, and my vision refocused, only to blur again less than a minute later. My temples throbbed as if someone were drumming from inside my head. "Clara, have some milk." My mom pushed the door open, placing a warm glass of milk by my hand and looking at me with concern. "You look terrible." "Thanks, Mom. I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. I took the glass and sipped the milk. The warm liquid soothed my throat, offering a brief moment of relief. Mom reached out and felt my forehead. "You've been studying all day. You need to take a break." "I can't." I shook my head. "The mock exams are next week. I have to." My words caught in my throat. The milk glass in front of me suddenly split into two. My hand began to tremble uncontrollably, and the glass slipped from my fingers, shattering on the floor with a loud crack and splashing milk everywhere. "Clara!" my mom cried out, quickly squatting down to check if I was hurt. I wanted to say I was fine, but the moment I opened my mouth, tears began to stream out without warning. One drop was followed by another, and soon I was sobbing like a lost child, all the pressure and fear I had been holding back bursting out like a dam breaking. "I can't remember it all. So many formulas, so many facts." I choked out between sobs, my vision completely blurred by tears. "I'm so scared. Scared I'll do badly. Scared I'll repeat the same mistakes all over again." My mom pulled me into her arms, gently patting my back. "Silly girl, it's just one exam. Just do your best. Don't put so much pressure on yourself." I cried on her shoulder for a long time, until the tears finally ran dry and only occasional sobs remained. Mom cleaned up the mess on the floor and insisted that I take a hot bath and go to bed early. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling as my emotions slowly settled. My phone suddenly vibrated. It was a text from Alex. "Don't come too early tomorrow morning. The library doesn't open until 8. I stared at the seemingly ordinary message for a long time, then suddenly understood. He must have noticed I wasn't doing well and was telling me to get more sleep. I texted back a simple, "Okay," then buried my face in my pillow, a small smile spreading across my lips. The next day, I slept for 2 extra hours and felt significantly better. When I got to the classroom, Alex was already at his desk reading. I put down my backpack and, after a moment's hesitation, walked over to his desk. "Thank you," I said softly. He looked up at me, nodded, and then pulled a folded piece of paper from his drawer and handed it to me. "Take a look at this." I opened it. It was a single, complex math problem, but with multiple ways to solve it. Each method was written out in extreme detail, with notes on the side explaining which approach was best for which type of situation. If you get nervous during the exam, stick with the method you know best. Don't try anything new, he said without looking at me, his voice calm, but his words made my nose tingle. Okay, I said, clutching the paper tightly. I will. The day of the mock exams was oppressively hot. Sitting in the exam hall, my palms were sweating so much that I had to keep wiping them with a tissue. The moment the test papers were handed out, I took a deep breath and forced myself to calm down. The first subject was language arts, which had always been my strong suit. The essay prompt was choice. I wrote the entire piece drawing from the memories and realizations of my two lives, the tip of my pen flying across the page as emotions poured out. For the following subjects, math, English, and the sciences, I tackled them one problem at a time. If I got stuck, I skipped it and came back after finishing everything else. Alex's advice worked perfectly. I wasn't aiming for perfection, just a solid, stable performance. When the bell rang for the end of the last exam, I put down my pen and let out a long sigh. No matter the result, I knew I had given it my all. 3 days later, the results were posted. I stood in front of the large ranking board, unable to believe my eyes. Clara Evans, total score 689, third in the grade. My name was right there, just after Alex and another top student, Yang Yi. I had jumped more than 20 places since the last exam. Oh my God, Clara, you're amazing! Chloe slapped my shoulder from behind. How did you suddenly do so well? Before I could answer, a crowd of other students had gathered around, all asking me how I studied and if I had any secret tips. I stood there feeling overwhelmed when my eyes accidentally met Alex's. He was standing on the edge of the crowd. He gave me a slight nod, the corner of his mouth twitching into an almost imperceptible smile. I just did a lot of practice problems, I mumbled to my classmates. Suddenly, I saw Ethan standing not far away, watching us with a dark, unreadable expression. His rank had dropped to 250th in the grade, which, in the competitive world of college admissions, meant he might not even get into a decent university. After the crowd finally dispersed, Ethan blocked my path. Congratulations, Clara, he said, forcing a smile. I always knew you were smart. Thanks, I replied curtly, turning to leave. Wait, he said, grabbing my wrist. I need to ask you for a favor. I pulled my hand back. What is it? My grades. You saw them. He stared at the ground, shifting his feet nervously. Could you help me study, like you used to? In my past life, I did often help him study, even sacrificing my own review time to organize notes for him and explain his mistakes. And how had he repaid me? Every time we argued after getting married, he would sneer, "You think you're so great? If my parents hadn't forced me, do you think I would have ever married a nerd like you?" Sorry, I don't have time, I said, turning to walk away. Just for a week. No, 3 days would be fine, he pleaded, rushing after me. Come on, for old time's sake. Ethan, I stopped and looked him straight in the eye. Do you know why I got third place? It's because for the past month, I've studied until dawn every single day. I gave up all my free time and my social life. I even considered talking to you a waste of my time. Do you really think I'm going to throw away all of my hard work for you? His face flushed a deep, embarrassed red. How did you become so selfish? This isn't selfish. It's self-respect, I said calmly. You don't study yourself, so what right do you have to ask someone else to sacrifice their time for you? I walked away without looking back, my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't from nervousness or fear, but from a profound sense of release. I had finally said the words I had been unable to say in my past life. After school, as I was packing my bag for the library, an unexpected person appeared at the classroom door. It was Sophia. Clara, can we talk for a minute? She asked, her voice surprisingly friendly, a stark contrast to our last encounter in the cafeteria. I watched her warily. What's up? She walked in and sat down in the seat in front of mine. First, I want to apologize for my attitude in the cafeteria the other day. I was in a bad mood. I nodded, waiting for her to continue. Second, Sophia bit her lip. I wanted to ask you how you study. My grades have always been average, and I'm really impressed by how quickly you've improved. I looked at her, surprised. The Sophia from my past life was an arrogant schoolbelle who, aside from her large crowd of admirers, rarely initiated conversations with anyone, let alone asked for academic advice. I I just do a lot of practice problems and review my mistakes, I answered cautiously. Can you be more specific? Sophia took out a small notebook, looking ready to take notes. Like your schedule, what review books you use. Seeing her sincere expression, I let my guard down a little and shared some of my study methods. As we talked, I realized Sophia was actually very smart and quick to understand. She probably just hadn't focused on her studies before. By the way, Sophia asked suddenly as our conversation was winding down, are you and Alex close? My heart skipped a beat. We're okay. We've just studied together a few times. He's my cousin, Sophia said with a smile. We have different last names, but his dad and my mom are siblings. My eyes widened. What? He didn't tell you? Sophia looked surprised too. I thought you two were really close. We're just study partners, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though my mind was reeling. Alex and Sophia were cousins. Did Alex know about Ethan and Sophia in my past life? Did he know what had happened to me? Alex is actually a really great guy. He's just not good at expressing himself, Sophia continued. He mentioned you to me a few days ago, said you were special. My heart skipped another beat. What did he say about me? He said you're a really hard worker and you have a unique way of thinking, Sophia said with a wink. Coming from him, that's high praise. He barely talks about anyone. I didn't know how to respond, so I pretended to organize my backpack to hide my blushing face. Oh, right, Sophia said, standing up to leave. Ethan has been pestering me lately, saying I need to be responsible for him or something. It's so annoying. Do you know what that's about? My hands froze. Responsible? Yeah, from when he hurt his foot. I reluctantly helped him to the nurse's office, and now he's latched onto me, Sophia said, rolling her eyes. He's saying since I helped him once, I have to keep helping him. It's completely ridiculous. I suddenly thought about Ethan and Sophia getting married overseas in my past life. I had always assumed they were deeply in love, but hearing Jessica's tone now, it seemed that wasn't the case at all. You don't like him? I asked tentatively. Ethan, Sophia scoffed. Besides being decent looking, what else does he have going for him? His grades are average. He's just okay at basketball, and he thinks he's all that. I'm planning to go abroad for grad school. Why would I ever be involved with him? Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. If Sophia never even liked Ethan, why did they get married overseas in my past life? Did Ethan force her? Or did he deceive her? Clara, are you okay? Sophia asked, looking at me with confusion. I'm fine, I forced a smile. Just a little tired. Well, you should get some rest, Sophia said sincerely. Thanks for sharing your study tips. They were really helpful. Watching her leave, I felt a complex mix of emotions. In my past life, I had seen Sophia as my rival and had hated her for years. But now it seemed she might have been one of Ethan's victims, too. This realization made most of my hostility toward her disappear. Over the weekend, Alex and I studied at the library as usual. I wanted to ask him about Sophia several times, but didn't know how to bring it up. Finally, during our afternoon break, I couldn't hold it in anymore. Alex, Sophia said you two are cousins. His hand paused on the page. He looked up at me. Yeah. Why didn't you tell me? I never found the right time, he said, pushing up his glasses. And is it that important? I thought about it. It wasn't really important, just surprising. But another question lingered in my mind. So, do you know that Ethan has a crush on Sophia? Alex's expression turned a bit strange. I know. A lot of people at school know. Sophia said she doesn't like him. She doesn't, Alex said, closing his book. She likes guys who are smart and ambitious. Ethan doesn't fit her criteria. Thank you, Alex, I said suddenly and sincerely. For what? For everything, I said with a smile. The notes, the study methods. The tips of Alex's ears turned slightly red. He looked down and opened his book. Let's get back to studying. The exams are just a month away. I nodded and dove back into my work, but my heart felt calmer and more resolute than ever before. The Monday of the week after the mock exam results were posted, a strange atmosphere filled the classroom. During the break, I noticed several classmates glancing between me and Alex before huddling together to whisper. When Alex was out of the room, Chloe sidled up to my desk mysteriously. Clara, you guys should be careful, she whispered. Ethan went to see Miss Davis after school yesterday. He told her you and Alex were dating and that it was a bad influence on the class. The pen in my hand nearly fell to the floor. What? He made it sound so convincing, saying you go to the library together every day and even have private dates on the weekend, Chloe said with a pout. Everyone knows he's just jealous that you did so well on the exam and are getting close to Alex. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. The Ethan from my past life was just like this. The moment he sensed me slipping from his control, he would do anything to sabotage me. I just never thought he'd resort to such a childish tactic. Thanks for the heads up, I said to Chloe, forcing a smile. But we really are just studying together. Of course I know that, Chloe patted my shoulder. But Miss Davis might want to talk to you. Just be prepared. The bell rang, and Miss Davis walked in with a stack of test papers. I stole a glance at Ethan. He was sitting up straight, a smug smile on his face, occasionally looking back at me with a provocative glint in his eyes. Before I hand back the tests, I have a few things to say, Miss Davis said, setting the papers down. Her eyes scanned the room, finally landing on Ethan. A student recently reported to me that there's some dating going on in the class. A murmur rippled through the classroom. I felt my face flush. Alex, however, remained expressionless, though the pen in his hand paused for a fraction of a second. I believe, Miss Davis continued, her voice steady and firm, that during this final push for the exams, every student should be focused on their own studies, not on gossiping about other people's normal social interactions. The smile on Ethan's face froze. Certain students would be better off spending their time looking at their own test papers instead of staring at others, Miss Davis said, pulling a paper from the stack. For example, on this mock exam, someone dropped from the top 100 in the grade to over 200th. Yet they still have the energy to worry about who is or isn't going to the library. The entire class turned to stare at Ethan. His face turned a deep shade of crimson, the veins on his neck bulging. Now I'll hand back the tests, Miss Davis said, moving on. Alex, 148, first in the grade. As Alex went up to get his paper, Miss Davis patted his shoulder. Keep it up. Clara, 143, third in the grade. When I walked to the front, Miss Davis gave me a slight smile. Great improvement. I took my test, the knot in my stomach finally loosening. As I walked back to my seat, my eyes met Ethan's. His were burning with anger and resentment, but I just calmly looked away. When the bell rang for lunch, students left in small groups. I deliberately packed my things slowly, waiting for the room to empty. But Ethan suddenly blocked my path at the corner of the hallway. Are you satisfied now? He spat, his teeth clenched. The whole class is laughing at me. You brought this on yourself, I said coldly. Alex and I are just study partners. What right do you have to slander us? Study partners? Ethan sneered. The whole class can see he likes you. So what if he does? I looked him straight in the eye. Who I hang out with is my business, is not for you to interfere. You... He grabbed my wrist forcefully. Clara, you've changed. You never used to be like this with me. Let go, I said, yanking my hand away. Wake up, Ethan. I'm not that stupid girl who revolves around you anymore. I have my own life, my own goals, and you. I deliberately looked him up and down. You completely bombed the mock exams, and you still have time to meddle in other people's lives? His face went pale, as if he'd been stabbed in the chest. I turned and walked away, my heart pounding but my steps steady. As I rounded the corner, I nearly ran into someone. It was Alex. He was leaning against the wall, holding 2 workbooks, having clearly heard the entire conversation. "Sorry," I said, looking down in embarrassment. "Don't be," he said, handing me one of the workbooks. "Are you still going to the library this weekend?" I looked up at him. Sunlight streamed through the hallway window, outlining him in a bright halo. His expression was as calm as ever, but his eyes held a warmth I had never seen before. "Yes," I said, taking the workbook, a smile forming on my lips. "Of course I am." We walked back to the classroom for the evening study session side by side, neither of us mentioning what had just happened, and sat back down in our seats under the astonished gazes of our classmates. Nothing and no one was going to stop me now. 2 weeks before the SATs, the air in the school was thick with tension and anticipation. The classroom fell silent. There was no more chatting or joking around. Even during breaks, the only sounds were the rustling of pages and the scratching of pens. I buried myself in a mountain of practice tests, doing 3 full sets a day, filling my error logbook and memorizing key concepts. The notebook Alex had given me was now worn and frayed at the edges, covered in my own dense annotations. "Clara, the homeroom teacher wants to see you in her office," Chloe called from the doorway. I put down my pen, rubbed my sore wrist, and headed to the faculty office. On the way, I passed the nurse's office. The door was ajar, and I saw Ethan sitting inside, while the school nurse took his blood pressure. He looked pale, with dark circles under his eyes, completely worn out. Ever since the mock exam results, Ethan's condition had been deteriorating. I heard his parents were furious with his grades and had hired 3 tutors to work with him in shifts, but with little success. A few times when I was studying late at the library, I saw him running laps on the track alone, frantically trying to vent his emotions. "Excuse me," I said, knocking lightly on the office door. "Come in." Miss Davis looked up and smiled when she saw me. "Clara, have a seat." I sat in the chair across from her, noticing my college application form spread out on her desk. My first choice was clearly written: Capital University School of Medicine, Clinical Medicine Program. "I've looked over your application. It's very ambitious," Miss Davis said, pushing up her glasses. "With your current scores, as long as you perform as usual, getting into Capital University's program shouldn't be a problem." I nodded, my heart racing. The dream from my past life was finally within reach. "However," Miss Davis's tone shifted, "I hear you've been studying very intensely lately. Some students mentioned you often stay at the library until it closes and are the first to arrive at the classroom in the morning." I pursed my lips. "The exams are right around the corner. I just want to push a little harder." "Effort is a good thing, but it needs to be balanced." Miss Davis's voice softened. "Your health is your most important asset. Especially since you want to study medicine, you should understand this better than anyone." I looked down at my hands. My knuckles were slightly red from writing so much, and my nails were cut short. "I understand, Miss Davis. I'll pay attention to getting enough rest." "By the way," Miss Davis said, as if suddenly remembering something, "Ethan's parents came to see me yesterday. They wanted to ask if you could help tutor Ethan. I know you two grew up together." I looked up sharply. "Miss Davis, I refuse." She seemed taken aback by my bluntness. "His situation is quite difficult. His grades have been slipping." "Miss Davis," I took a deep breath, "it's not that I'm unwilling to help a classmate, but this is the final sprint. Every minute is precious. Ethan has tutors and his parents' support. All I have is myself." Miss Davis looked at me for a long moment, then finally nodded. "You're right. I was being thoughtless. Focus on your preparations. I believe you can achieve a great score." Leaving the office, I let out a long sigh of relief. The old me would have agreed without a second thought, even feeling it was my duty. But now, I had finally learned to put my own needs first. On my way home, I was stopped at the school gate by Ethan's parents. "Oh, Clara, I'm begging you," Ethan's mother said, grabbing my hand, her eyes red. "Ethan's grades are so bad, he's in danger of not even getting into a second-tier college. Please just help him, for the sake of you two growing up together." I gently pulled my hand away. "Auntie, I'm sorry. I really don't have the time." "We can pay you," Ethan's father chimed in hurriedly. $200 an hour. No, $300. I shook my head. "It's not about the money. The exams are almost here, and I need to focus on my own preparations." "How can you be so selfish?" His mother's voice suddenly grew sharp. Ethan was so good to you, protecting you since you were kids. Is this how you repay him? I looked at her quietly, suddenly remembering what she had said when she came to see me in the hospital after my amputation in my past life. Clara, don't you worry. Our family will take responsibility. Ethan will take care of you for the rest of your life. At the time, I thought it was concern. Later, I realized it was just guilt and charity. After we were married, they allowed Ethan to subject me to his cold abuse, and even repeatedly tried to persuade me to use a surrogate. It was laughable. Auntie, I said calmly, Ethan has professional tutors and I'm just a student. You should trust the professionals instead of pinning your hopes on me. After a slight bow, I turned and walked away, letting their shouts fade behind me. Once I turned the corner, I realized my hands were shaking and had to stop and take a few deep breaths to calm down. When I got home, Mom was in the kitchen preparing dinner. I put down my backpack and, after a moment's hesitation, told her about my run-in with Ethan's parents. Mom put down her knife and wiped her hands. They called me this afternoon, too. What? I stared at her wide-eyed. Mom sighed. I turned them down flat. Your job right now is to focus on your exams. Where would you find the time to tutor someone else? I went over and hugged her. Thanks, Mom. Silly girl. Mom patted my back. It was my fault before. I always told you to take care of Ethan, thinking that girls should be considerate and thoughtful. Now I understand. You have to be responsible for your own life first. My nose tingled, and I buried my face in her shoulder. My mother in my past life had held me just like this, crying and apologizing after my amputation. But by then, it was too late. After dinner, I got a call from Alex asking me to meet him on the school roof. It was the first time we were meeting somewhere other than the library, and I was a bit puzzled, but I went anyway. On that early summer night, a gentle breeze swept across the rooftop. In the distance, the city lights twinkled like stars. Alex was leaning against the railing, looking up at the night sky. You're here, he said, turning his head as he heard my footsteps. What's up? I asked, walking over to him. He handed me a bottle of warm milk. Relax. You've been wound way too tight lately. I took the milk and sipped it slowly. The warm liquid soothed my throat and eased the day's fatigue. Thanks, I smiled at him. I am pretty tired. Look, Alex pointed to the sky. The Big Dipper. I followed his finger and saw the 7 bright stars forming the shape of a ladle in the night sky. And over there is the constellation Aquila. Alex's voice was especially soft in the darkness. The brightest one in the middle is Altair. I looked at him, surprised. You study astronomy? I look at it sometimes, he said, pushing up his glasses. When I was a kid, my dad used to take me stargazing. He said the universe is vast and human troubles are small. I looked up at the immense starry sky and suddenly felt that my anxiety and stress were indeed insignificant. No matter how the exams turned out, this wouldn't be the end of my life. Alex, I asked softly, why do you want to study medicine? He was silent for a moment. My mother had a congenital heart defect. She passed away last year. That's when I decided I wanted to be a cardiothoracic surgeon. My heart clenched. I'm sorry, I didn't know. It's okay. He shook his head. What about you? Why surgery? I gazed at the distant lights, memories of my past life flooding back. I once had a dream that I lost my legs. I know that feeling of despair and helplessness. If I can become a surgeon, maybe I can help more people like me. It was the first time since my rebirth that I had mentioned my past life to anyone, albeit disguised as a dream. The darkness hid my trembling hands. Alex didn't press for details, just gave a soft, We stood there side by side, looking at the stars, each lost in our own thoughts. A strange sense of peace and understanding flowed between us. Good luck on the exams, Alex said suddenly as we were about to leave. I nodded. You too. The following days flew by. I fell into a routine of doing practice tests, correcting mistakes, and reviewing. My error logbook got thinner and thinner while my confidence grew. 3 days before the exams, the school let out for self-study. As I was at home organizing my final notes, I got a call from Sophia. Clara! Her voice was a little frantic. Ethan just asked me if we could meet after school. He said he has something important to give me. I said no, but he seems insistent on waiting for me near my house. My heart sank. In my past life, today was the day I got into the car accident while delivering the love letter to Sophia for Ethan. He probably wants to give you the love letter himself, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's so annoying, Sophia complained. I've turned him down so many times. By the way, my cousin said if you're free, you two could go to the library tomorrow for a final push. Okay, I agreed. After hanging up, I was lost in thought. Ethan was going to deliver the letter himself. History seemed to be repeating itself, only with the roles reversed. If he went to deliver the letter, would he get into an accident like I did in my past life? Should I warn him? My finger hovered over Ethan's name in my phone's contact list, but I couldn't bring myself to press it. The cruel words he had said to me echoed in my ears. You're just a cripple. How could you ever compare to Sophia? If you hadn't gotten involved and gotten into a car crash delivering that letter, why would I have been forced to marry you? I locked my phone and picked up my pen to continue studying. Everyone has the right to choose their own path, and they have to be responsible for their choices. This time, I chose to focus on my own future. The day of the exams arrived. Sitting in the exam hall, I felt surprisingly calm. When the test papers were handed out, I focused completely on answering the questions, forgetting the time, my surroundings, and even the fact that I had been reborn. At that moment, I was just a regular student, fighting for my dream. When the bell for the final subject rang, I put down my pen and let out a long, slow breath. It was over. Whatever the result, I had given it my all. I walked out of the exam hall into the bright, almost blinding sunlight. Mom was waiting for me at the school gate, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. Congratulations to my daughter on finishing her exams, she said, hugging me. The scent of the flowers was all around me. Mom, did Ethan take the exams? I asked hesitantly. My mother's expression grew complicated. He had an accident. He was hit by a car 2 nights ago. His right leg was severely injured. The surgery took several hours. Even though I had anticipated it, hearing the news still sent a jolt through me. The gears of fate had turned with such precision, only this time it was Ethan who was run over, not me. Is it serious? I asked softly. I heard he might need an amputation, Mom sighed. His parents are devastated. He's their only son. I didn't say anything, just hugged my mom tightly. If I hadn't been reborn, it would be my parents who were devastated right now. Back home, I shut myself in my room, lying on my bed and staring at the ceiling. I should have felt a sense of vengeful satisfaction, but strangely, all I felt was a deep exhaustion and relief. Ethan had paid the price for his choices, and I could finally, truly move on. It wasn't until 3 days after the exams that my mother told me the full details of Ethan's surgery. His lower right leg was amputated, she said while cutting fruit. I heard the recovery isn't going well. There might be an infection. I put down the book I was reading. Should we go see him? My mother looked at me surprised. You want to go? We're neighbors, and we grew up together, I said calmly. It's a matter of basic courtesy. That afternoon, my parents and I went to the hospital. Ethan's room was filled with flowers and fruit baskets, but his parents looked like they had aged 10 years overnight. Ethan lay on the hospital bed. His right leg, covered by a white blanket, was noticeably shorter. Clara, he said, his eyes lighting up for a moment when he saw me, then dimming again. How did your exams go? Fine, I answered briefly, placing the fruit we brought on the nightstand. How are you feeling? He gave a bitter smile. How do you think? I'm a cripple. Don't say that, his mother interjected, her eyes red. The doctor said you'll still be able to walk with a prosthesis. Ethan didn't respond, just looked at me. You must have done really well, right? You studied so hard. I didn't deny it. We'll see when the scores come out. I didn't even get to take the exams. His voice choked. My life is over. The atmosphere in the room was suffocating. My parents made small talk with his while I stood to the side, watching the once vibrant young man now lying in bed, wallowing in self-pity. I had experienced this same despair in my past life, but at least now I had a second chance. Why? Why didn't you come see me sooner? Ethan suddenly whispered when the adults were talking amongst themselves. The day of the accident, I kept calling your name. I looked him straight in the eye. Ethan, we're not friends anymore, remember? His face went white. Just because I didn't want you hanging out with Alex? You can be that cruel? No, it's because you looked down on me, used me, and never once truly respected me, I said calmly. Focus on getting better. I wish you a speedy recovery. As we left the hospital, my mom looked at me with concern. Clara, between you and Ethan. Mom, I interrupted her. He and I have been on different paths for a long time. My mother seemed to want to say more, but in the end, she just sighed and let it go. On the day the exam results were released, I was sitting in front of the computer early, my finger hovering over the search button. My mom stood nervously behind me, while my dad pretended to be calmly reading the newspaper, though he glanced at the screen every 3 seconds. Go on, check it, Dad finally said, unable to stand the suspense. I took a deep breath and clicked the button. The moment the page refreshed, my eyes went straight to the total score. 708, 66th in the entire province. Ah, Mom shrieked and hugged me. My daughter is brilliant. Dad threw down his newspaper and pulled us both into a hug. That's my girl. You're a lock for Capital University's med school. I just sat there as tears streamed down my face. A score of 708 was something I couldn't have even dreamed of in my past life. All the hard work and perseverance since my rebirth had paid off in this one moment. The following days were a blur of joy and activity. Filling out applications, preparing enrollment documents, accepting congratulations from friends and relatives. My phone was flooded with messages, and even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years called to celebrate. Clara, we're thinking of throwing you a college acceptance party, Mom suggested at dinner one night. We'll invite all our friends and family to celebrate. What do you think? Sounds great, I said with a smile. But let's not go too crazy. How can we not go all out? Mom's eyes lit up. You're the only one in our neighborhood in years to get into Capital University and in the top 100 of the province, no less. The party was set for that weekend in a hotel ballroom. I wore a simple white dress, my hair tied in a high, neat ponytail. The ballroom was full of people, relatives, neighbors, teachers, and classmates. Clara, congratulations! Chloe walked in, holding a bouquet of flowers. You and Alex got the best scores in our class. You've made us all so proud. I took the flowers and looked around. Is Alex here? I just saw him outside, Chloe said with a wink. I think he wants to talk to you alone. My heart suddenly sped up. I made an excuse to go to the restroom and slipped out of the ballroom. Sure enough, Alex was standing by the window in the hallway. Sunlight streamed through the glass, outlining him in a bright halo. Congratulations, he smiled when he saw me. You're a sure thing for med school. Yeah, I said, walking over to him. What about you? You're set on Capital University. He nodded. That's amazing, I said sincerely. We were quiet for a moment before he turned to face me. Clara, there's something I want to tell you. What is it? I looked up at him, noticing the tips of his ears were slightly red. He took a deep breath. I like you, not as a study partner, but... Alex, I interrupted him softly. We're still too young. We haven't experienced enough. It's easy to mistake friendship for love. His expression froze. Are you rejecting me? It's not a rejection, I said, choosing my words carefully. I just think we should focus on our studies first. Medical school is incredibly demanding, and a long-distance relationship would be even harder. If our feelings haven't changed in a few years, can we talk about this then? The truth was, I did have feelings for Alex, but the trauma from my past relationship made me hesitant to start a new one. I needed time, space, and to become a better version of myself first. Alex looked at me for a long time, then finally nodded. I understand, but I'll wait. My heart ached a little as he turned to leave, but I knew it was the right decision. Back in the ballroom, I was immediately enveloped in the joyful atmosphere. Classmates crowded around asking questions, and teachers came by one to congratulate me. Amid the laughter and celebration, I noticed a lonely figure in the corner. It was Ethan. He was in a wheelchair, the pant leg over his right leg hanging empty. No one was talking to him. No one was even looking at him. In my past life, I would have rushed to his side at an event like this, terrified he would feel lonely. But now, I chose to stay in the crowd, accepting the praise and honor that were mine. As the party was winding down, Ethan wheeled himself over and blocked my path. "Are you satisfied now?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Are you happy to see me like this?" I looked at him calmly. "I don't know what you mean." "You could have stopped me," he hissed, his eyes bloodshot. "If you had just agreed to deliver that letter for me, this never would have happened." "Ha, Ethan, you're still so selfish." I gave a disdainful smile and turned to walk toward my waiting parents. I could hear Ethan's hysterical shouting behind me, but it was quickly drowned out by the music and laughter from the ballroom. "Is everything okay?" Mom asked with concern. "What did he say?" "Nothing," I said, taking her arm. "Let's go home." As we left the hotel, the summer night sky was exceptionally bright. I looked up for the Big Dipper, remembering my conversation with Alex on the rooftop. Whatever the future held, at least for now, my life was heading in the right direction. The acceptance letter from the Capital University School of Medicine arrived a week later. I held the heavy envelope, gently tracing the gold-embossed name of the school, tears blurring my vision. The dream that was so out of reach in my past life had finally come true. The ginkgo leaves at the Capital University School of Medicine turned yellow, then green, then yellow again. 10 years passed in a flash. I stood in front of the surgical residence announcement board at the teaching hospital, my finger gently tracing the notice with my name and photo on it. Clara Evans, orthopedic surgery resident. Sunlight streamed through the hallway window, landing on the paper and shining straight into my heart. "Dr. Evans, congratulations," head nurse Wong said with a smile as she walked over. "I hear you turned down an offer from Johns Hopkins. So many people would kill for that opportunity." I smiled and tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear. Good orthopedic surgeons are needed more here at home. Over the past 10 years, Alex and I had kept in touch, maintaining a close but undefined relationship. He completed a dual degree in medicine and biology at Capital University and was now at Harvard pursuing an MD PhD. We occasionally discussed academic topics on WhatsApp or recommended the latest medical papers to each other. Whenever he came back to the country, we would meet at a coffee shop near our old high school and talk for hours. "Dr. Evans, operating room 3 is ready." An intern named Zhang poked his head in to inform me. I nodded and walked quickly toward the OR. Today's surgery was a complex knee replacement for a 70-year-old retired teacher. Washing my hands, sterilizing, putting on my surgical gown, the entire process was as natural to me as breathing. Under the shadowless lamp, as the scalpel made the first incision, I still felt a sense of sacred duty. Every time I held that scalpel, it was a form of redemption for the girl who had lost her legs in a past life. The surgery lasted 3 hours and was a success. As I walked out of the OR, I took off my mask and let out a long sigh. A nurse handed me my phone, which showed 3 missed calls, all from Alex. I called him back and he picked up almost immediately. "Clara!" Alex's voice came through the phone. "I'm back in the country." "Great! Dinner's on me," I said, walking to the doctor's lounge to pour myself a glass of water. "Have you heard about Sophia and Ethan?" He paused. "They're married." My hand trembled and the glass nearly slipped from my fingers. "What?" "It happened last year. Sophia was forced into it. The Liu family threatened to sue her for causing Ethan's accident if she didn't marry him." Alex's voice was tight with suppressed anger. They're a family of shameless bullies. They wouldn't let up, and Sophia's parents were too scared and pressured her to agree. I leaned against the wall, the image of Sophia's once vibrant face flashing in my mind. The scene from my past life overlapped with the present, only the roles were completely reversed. "How is she now?" I asked softly. "Not good," Alex sighed. "Ethan's leg injury never fully healed, and he needs frequent surgeries. His personality has become very volatile, and he's not good to Sophia. I only found out about all this recently." My nails dug into my palm. After hanging up, I stood by the window, gazing at the distant city skyline. It had been 10 years. I thought I had completely let go of the past, but hearing this news still sent a dull ache through my chest. Not for Ethan, but for Sophia, the girl I had considered my rival in a past life, only to discover in this one that she was a victim too. After work, I didn't go straight home. Instead, I drove to my old high school. It was dismissal time, and students in their uniforms laughed and joked as they poured out of the buildings, their youthful faces full of hope for the future. I stood by the track, seeing a ghostly image of my younger self, the foolish girl who used to run errands for Ethan. "Clara, is that really you?" A familiar voice came from behind. I turned to see my old homeroom teacher, Miss Davis. The wrinkles around her eyes were deeper, but her smile was as warm as ever. "Miss Davis," I said happily, walking up to her. "I heard you became an orthopedic surgeon. I'm so proud of you," she said, taking my hand and looking me up and down. The little girl who suddenly found her focus in class has really achieved her dream. My nose tingled. "It was all thanks to your encouragement." "Come, let's go to my office and chat," Miss Davis invited warmly. "As it happens, the school is planning to invite some outstanding alumni back for a lecture next month. Would you be interested?" Following Miss Davis down the familiar hallway, my eyes drifted unconsciously toward our old senior year classroom. Through the window, I could almost see Alex's profile as he bent over his notes, and Ethan turning back to smile at me. Those memories felt so distant now, like someone else's story. Miss Davis's office was filled with graduation photos from over the years. I found our class picture and gently traced my finger over the young faces. Ethan was in the back row, smiling brightly. Sophia was in the front center, beautiful and radiant. Alex was diagonally behind me, his expression serious. And as for me, I could barely recognize that shy, smiling girl. "Have you heard about Ethan?" Miss Davis asked suddenly, handing me a cup of tea. I nodded. "I just heard he got married." "That boy? He's changed a lot," Miss Davis sighed. "He was a different person after the accident. He came to the class reunion last year in his wheelchair, ordering Sophia around. It was heartbreaking to watch." "Heartbreaking for who?" I asked softly. "For both of them," Miss Davis said, her sad eyes looking at me. "That girl, Sophia, she was so proud back then. Now all her spirit is gone. And Ethan, too, going from a bright young man to that." I looked down at my reflection in the tea, silent. Wasn't I the same in my past life? From a high school student full of dreams to a bitter woman trapped in a wheelchair and a failed marriage. "But seeing you now, I'm so happy." Miss Davis patted my hand. "You've proven that no matter what you go through, you can always choose to stand up and move forward." The sun had set by the time I left the school. I stood at the gate, taking one last look at the building that held so many memories. Whatever the future held, at least at this moment, I was no longer a puppet for others to control. My phone rang again. It was the hospital's emergency department. "Dr. Evans, we have a complex case that needs your consultation." The on-call doctor's voice was urgent. "The patient has a severe infection in an old leg injury with signs of osteomyelitis. He may need emergency surgery." "I'm on my way back," I said, walking quickly to my car. When I got back to the hospital, I went straight to the consultation room. Through the glass window, I saw several doctors already gathered around. The patient on the bed had his back to the door, but I recognized that silhouette instantly. Even after 10 years, I would never mistake it. Ethan. My hand paused on the doorknob for a second before I pushed the door open. "Dr. Evans is here." The chief physician, Dr. Wang, greeted me. "This patient had a lower right leg amputation 10 years ago. For the past 6 months, the stump has been repeatedly infected, and multiple surgeries at other hospitals have been ineffective. Considering your specialty in complex orthopedic trauma and infections, we wanted to get your opinion. I walked to the bedside and finally saw Ethan's face clearly. He was much thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under his eyes and a downturned mouth that gave him a perpetual gloomy expression. The moment he saw me, his eyes widened and his lips trembled, but no words came out. "Let me see the chart," I said calmly, taking the folder from a resident and professionally flipping through it. "Clara," Ethan finally found his voice, you became a doctor." "Dr. Evans is the youngest attending orthopedic surgeon at our hospital," Dr. Wang introduced proudly. I pretended not to see Ethan's shocked expression and focused on the chart. The situation was indeed complex. Multiple failed surgeries, a drug-resistant infection, and necrotic tissue at the stump. The slightest misstep could lead to a second, higher amputation or even threaten his life. "He needs immediate surgical debridement, along with sensitive antibiotics," I said, closing the chart. "If we can't get the infection under control, we may have to consider a higher-level amputation." "No!" Ethan suddenly became agitated. "You can't cut anymore. I'm already. His voice caught in his throat and his eyes darted around frantically. Just then, the door opened, and a haggard-looking woman rushed in, clutching a handful of payment receipts. It was Sophia. I almost didn't recognize her. Her once shiny black hair was cut into a dry, short style. Her eyes had lost their sparkle, and her lips drooped at the corners, making her look as if all the life had been drained out of her. She froze when she saw me, then quickly looked down and stood silently by Ethan's side. "This is the patient's family member," the resident explained. "My wife," Ethan emphasized, looking at me with a strange expression that was part defiance, part plea. I nodded and turned professionally to Sophia. "The patient's condition is serious and requires immediate surgery. As his family member, please sign the consent form." Sophia took the form, her fingers trembling slightly. She looked up at me, a complex emotion flashing in her eyes, before silently signing her name. "Schedule the surgery for first thing tomorrow morning," I told the team. "Intensify the antibiotics tonight and monitor his temperature and blood work." After the consultation, I walked quickly to my office, my heart pounding in my chest. 10 years. I never thought we would meet again like this. And I never thought that seeing Ethan and Sophia in their current state would bring me no pleasure, only a deep sense of sorrow. "Dr. Evans?" a voice called out to me. I turned to see Sophia chasing after me, out of breath. "Yes." I stopped. She bit her lip, seemingly struggling with what to say. Finally, she just whispered, "Please, do a good job on his surgery. He may be, but he's still—" "Sophia," I interrupted her. "I'm a doctor. No matter who the patient is, I will do my best to treat them. That's my professional duty." She looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. And I'm sorry." "What are you sorry for?" For everything." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know, maybe this is my karma." I took a deep breath. "It's not your fault." I looked at the poor girl who had been manipulated by Ethan for half her life. She looked at me in surprise, as if she hadn't expected me to say that. "Go get some rest," I said, handing her a tissue. "Tomorrow's surgery will be long." As I turned to leave, I remembered something and looked back. "Does Alex know you're at the hospital?" She shook her head. "Don't tell him. I don't want him to worry." That night, I tossed and turned in the on-call room. At 3 a.m, I got up to check on Ethan. He was propped up in bed, staring blankly at the night outside his window. His eyes lit up when he saw me come in. "Clara, I knew you'd come." "Routine rounds," I said calmly, checking his IV drip and vital signs. "You know," his voice was hoarse, "I've thought about you every single day for the past 10 years. I regret not cherishing you back then." My hand paused for a second before I continued recording the monitor's data. "Seeing you so successful now, I'm truly happy for you," he said, reaching for my hand. I swiftly avoided it. "The patient needs to remain calm. It's important for the surgery," I said in a professional tone. "Don't be like this." His voice took on a pleading tone. I know you hate me, but I know I was wrong. I was forced to marry Sophia by my parents. I don't love her at all. I looked up at him and suddenly found the situation absurd. This was an exact replica of what he must have told Sophia about me in our past life, just with the roles reversed. Did you know, I said softly, that I once had an amputation? He froze. What? In another time, another life, I said, looking him straight in the eye. I got into a car accident delivering a love letter to Sophia for you. I lost my right leg and missed the SATs. Your parents, out of guilt, forced you to marry me. But you hated me to the bone, and in the end, you left me and ran off with Sophia overseas. His face went deathly pale. What? What are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about, I said, taking out my phone and quietly starting a recording. Ethan, no matter which reality we're in, you always blame others for your mistakes. Do you really think you're blameless? His breathing grew ragged. I'm not. It was you who insisted on giving Sophia that love letter. Why won't you admit it now? Yes, I was obsessed back then, but I realize now that it's you I love. Now it's your turn to have a taste of it, I said, taking a step closer. Trapped in a broken body, dependent on someone you don't love, living every day in regret. How does it feel? Clara, tears welled up in his eyes. Please, forgive me. Give me a chance. I'll divorce Sophia. I will. I will give you the best medical treatment, I said, taking a step back. Because that is my professional responsibility. But beyond that, there has been nothing between us for a long time. With that, I turned and left, hearing his suppressed sobs as the door clicked shut. In the hallway, I stopped, saved the recording, and sent it to Sophia with a simple message. You deserve to know the truth, and you deserve a better life. On the day of the surgery, I arrived at the hospital an hour early. In front of the restroom mirror, I washed my hands meticulously. The repetitive, mechanical motions, something I had done thousands of times before. The cool water running over my arms washed away the last traces of hesitation and doubt. Today, I wasn't Clara Evans. I was Dr. Evans, a professional orthopedic surgeon. The operating room was ready. The anesthesiologist, scrub nurse, and circulating nurse were all in position. Under the shadowless lamp, Ethan lay quietly on the operating table, already under anesthesia. Surgery begins, I announced, reaching for the scalpel the nurse handed me. The moment the blade cut through the skin, my world shrank to the size of the surgical field. Infected tissue, damaged bone, residual sutures, all the problems were laid bare before me. A decade of medical training combined with the personal experience of my past life gave me an extraordinary understanding of this type of trauma. Cautery, I said, holding out my hand. The scrub nurse placed the instrument precisely in my palm. The surgery lasted 6 hours. We completely removed the infected and necrotic tissue, repaired the damaged bone structure, and preserved as much of the stump length as possible. By the time the final suture was in place, my scrubs were soaked with sweat. The surgery was successful, I announced, straightening up, tired but satisfied. Send him to recovery, monitor vitals closely. As I left the operating room, I ran right into a frantic Sophia. She looked like she hadn't slept all night, her eyes red and swollen, clutching a crumpled tissue in her hand. How did it go? She asked anxiously. The surgery was a success, I said, taking off my mask. We've cleared the source of the infection and saved the stump, but he'll need long-term physical therapy. Her shoulders slumped as if a heavy burden had finally been lifted. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me, I said, rubbing my brow tiredly. It's my job. After a moment's hesitation, I asked the question that was on my mind. Did you listen to the recording? Sophia nodded, a flicker of pain in her eyes. I did. To be honest, I didn't need to hear it to know. Ever since we got married, he's often called out your name in his sleep and then cursed me for not being you. My heart felt like it had been pricked by a needle. Sophia, you don't have to live like this. I know, she said with a bitter smile. But my parents are afraid of the Liu family's retaliation. I I don't know what to do. Does Alex know about your situation? She shook her head. I don't want him to worry. He's busy enough on his own over there. You fool, I couldn't help but say. Family is who you're supposed to rely on at times like this. If Alex knew you were suffering like this and you didn't tell him, he would be the one who's truly hurt. Sophia's tears finally fell. I really can't take it anymore. I took her to the doctor's lounge and poured her a cup of hot water. In broken sentences, she told me about the last 10 years, being forced to marry, giving up her chance to study abroad, taking care of the moody and unpredictable Ethan day and night, and enduring the cold remarks of his parents. They think I'm the one who ruined Ethan, Sophia said, wiping her tears. They say if I hadn't rejected his love letter that night, he wouldn't have gotten into the accident. That's not your fault, I said firmly. Everyone has to be responsible for their own choices. Ethan chose to speed in the rain that day. It's only natural that he should bear the consequences. Sophia looked up at me, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. You really think so? Of course, I said, taking her cold hand in mine. Sophia, you're only 28. You have a long life ahead of you. Don't make the same mistakes someone else did. I want a divorce, Sophia said suddenly, her voice soft but firm. But the Liu family will never agree. They said if I dare to divorce him, they'll make sure my parents can't live in this city. I thought for a moment, and an idea came to me. What if you had proof that Ethan was mentally abusing you, like a recording? Sophia's eyes lit up. You mean, the recording I sent you yesterday, plus his usual verbal abuse, is enough to apply for a restraining order and file for divorce, I said. I can help you contact a lawyer, and I'm sure Alex will support you. Clara! Sophia's tears started flowing again. Why are you helping me? I used to be so... Because we were both his victims, I said softly. Besides, it's a doctor's duty to be compassionate. 3 days later, Ethan was fully awake from the anesthesia. When I went to check on him, he was propped up in bed, looking at the sunlight outside with a complex expression. Sophia wasn't in the room. She had already taken the recording and the documents prepared by her lawyer to file for divorce. The surgery was a success, I said, inspecting his wound. If you recover well, you can be fitted for a new prosthesis in 2 months. Ethan turned to look at me, his eyes filled with a vulnerability and confusion I had never seen before. Sophia left. My hands didn't stop moving. I see. She said she wants a divorce. His voice trembled. She said she's never coming back. I didn't respond, continuing to record his vital signs. Clara! He suddenly grabbed my wrist. I truly have nothing left now, please. Just give me one chance, okay? I swear I'll... Ethan. I pulled my hand away calmly. Have I ever told you how you treated me in that other life? When I needed you the most, you chose someone else. The color drained from his face. Now you know how I felt back then, I said, looking him straight in the eye. But that doesn't mean I'll repeat your mistakes. I have my own life, my career, and the people I care about. Alex, he said with a bitter smile. So it really is him. That's none of your business, I said, closing the chart. Get some rest. Your physical therapy starts tomorrow. As I walked out of the room, I let out a long sigh, as if a weight I had carried for years had finally been lifted. The thrill of revenge? No, all I felt was a deep sense of release. The past life, at this moment, had finally come to a close. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Alex. Sophia told me everything. Thank you for your help. When are you free? I want to see you. I replied, let's wait until Ethan is discharged. I want to focus on finishing this treatment. A month later, Ethan's wound had healed well, and he was ready to be transferred to a rehabilitation center. The divorce proceedings had also begun. Sophia was temporarily staying in the U.S., preparing to reapply for the graduate program she had to abandon. The day Ethan was discharged, his parents came to pick him up. When his mother saw me, a flicker of embarrassment and shame crossed her face. Dr. Evans, she began hesitantly, Thank you for healing my son. In the past, I shook my head. I was just doing what a doctor should do. As I turned to leave, I heard the clatter of something falling to the ground, and Ethan calling my name from behind, but I didn't look back. 2 weeks after Ethan's discharge, Alex and I met at the coffee shop near our old high school. 10 years had passed, and Alex's demeanor was calmer and more mature, with a newfound firmness in his features. He wore a simple white shirt and dark trousers, and the eyes behind his gold-rimmed glasses lit up when he saw me. "Clara!" He stood up to pull out my chair. "You've lost weight." "The life of a surgeon," I said with a smile as I sat down. "How's Sophia?" "Much better," Alex said, pushing over the latte he had already ordered for me. "She's preparing to reapply to the PhD program at MIT. The divorce went smoothly. The Liu family backed off once they heard those recordings." I nodded and took a small sip of coffee, letting the warm liquid slide down my throat. "Thank you," Alex said suddenly. "If it weren't for you, Sophia might have been trapped in that marriage for the rest of her life." "I just did what I had to," I said, putting down my cup. "So, how's your research at Harvard going?" Alex's eyes instantly lit up, and he began to talk enthusiastically about his project, the application of gene editing technology in bone regeneration. As I listened, I couldn't help but smile. He was still the same Alex who could talk nonstop about medicine, only now he was more confident and passionate. "Actually," his tone suddenly shifted, "I came back this time for another reason besides Sophia's situation." "What is it?" I asked curiously. He took a small box out of his pocket and pushed it in front of me. My heart began to race, and my fingers trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside wasn't a ring, but a uniquely shaped pin, engraved with the words, "Harvard MIT Health Sciences and Technology Program." "I want to invite you to join my research team." Alex's voice was calm, but his eyes were blazing. "Your clinical experience, combined with my basic research, could lead to groundbreaking work in bone regeneration." I picked up the pin. Sunlight streamed through the window, refracting into a rainbow of colors on its surface. "Is this a job offer?" "More than that." Alex took a deep breath. "It's also the start of me wanting to pursue you again. 10 years ago, you said we were too young. I think we're both mature enough now to know what we want." I looked at the man who had walked with me through the most important years of my reborn life, a wave of warmth spreading through my chest. I had never experienced a healthy love in my past life. In this one, Alex, in his own way, had taught me what respect, understanding, and support truly meant. "I need to think about it," I finally said. "My work is here. My patients need me." "Of course," Alex nodded. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you." When we left the coffee shop, the sun was setting, stretching our shadows long behind us. Alex's hand occasionally brushed against mine, warm and steady. "Oh, by the way," he said, as if suddenly remembering. "Next month is the school's anniversary. Miss Davis invited us to come back and give a speech. Are you going?" "Yes," I answered without hesitation. "I want to tell those kids that no matter what happens, you always have a chance to start over." A year later, Alex and I had a simple wedding in the United States. The night before, I received a text from an unknown number. "Congratulations. I owe you an apology, and I owe you a thank you. Ethan." I didn't reply, just quietly deleted the message. According to Sophia, Ethan's father had passed away not long ago. To support his family, Ethan had left the rehab center early. She didn't know what kind of work he was doing now, but I no longer cared. Whether his life was good or bad had nothing to do with me anymore. It was all his own doing. At the wedding, Alex placed a specially made ring on my finger. Engraved on the inside were the words, "To heal, to love, to grow." I looked up at the man who was about to become my husband, my heart filled with a calm joy. We didn't exchange expensive diamond rings, but chose these special surgical steel ones, symbolizing both our profession and the strong, pure bond between us. 5 years later, on our high school's anniversary, Alex and I returned to give a speech, our 3-year-old twins in tow. The two kids sat in the front row, looking around curiously, while Alex and I stood at the podium, sharing our story. The most wonderful thing about life is, I said, looking at the young faces in the audience with a smile, that it's always full of infinite possibilities. No matter what setbacks you face, remember the sun will still rise tomorrow and you will always have the chance to start over. After the speech, a limping figure quietly left from the back of the auditorium. I didn't follow. I didn't even let my gaze linger. On the way home, Alex held a child in each arm. I walked beside him, the setting sun stretching our four shadows long, merging them into one, pointing toward the horizon.